Welcome to Beyond Checkbox Compliance, where we move past the bare minimum and into real conversation shaping the security industry. I am Susie Smybert, CEO of RESTIV Technology, and this episode focuses on the incredible women leading, innovating, and redefining cybersecurity. I'll be sitting down with industry experts, disruptors, and trailblazers to uncover their insights, experiences, and the challenges they've tackled along the way. Because real security isn't about checking a box. It is about leadership, resilience, and driving change.
Welcome to a special episode of Beyond Checkbox Compliance, hosted by Susie Smybert. On this episode, Susie is joined by an incredible panel of women in cybersecurity and tech leadership. Megan Anderson, Chief of Staff at RESTIV Technology. Jessica Wiseman, Director in PwC Canada's Strategy and Transformation Office. Amy Caughlin, Co-founder and Chief Growth Officer at Jazzberry. And Selina Lamb, Service Delivery Manager at Fortinet. But before we begin, the conversations and answers from this podcast are solely the opinion of the speakers and do not represent the speakers' employers or any other organization with which the speakers may be affiliated. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you everybody for joining. I am really excited to have gathered a bunch of really smart women that can help us with this podcast and share a little bit of your journey and what security means to you and what are some advice to help grow the field and have better talent join from all of your different perspectives. I won't do my introduction. That's been pre-recorded. We'll start with you, Selina, and every one of you, a quick snippet of who you are, what you bring to the table, and we'll dive right in our questions this afternoon.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Selina Lamb. I am currently a service delivery manager at Fortinet, focusing on SOC as a service and product management. But my career has really started in cybersecurity in 2018. And throughout that time, it's really been focused on security operations and incident response. And just what I bring to the table, I think, is hopefully some knowledge in security that I can share with individuals that are really interested and curious on, their careers, but also helping businesses grow their cybersecurity knowledge and their defenses.
Thank you, Selina. Megan?
Hi, I'm Megan Anderson. I'm currently the Chief of Staff here at RESTIV. My role's dedicated to operational excellence and aligning strategic objectives with execution. My journey didn't start in cybersecurity. I was an EA for several years. I've been a chief of staff for a few years now. And my passions really just sort of led me into environments where security and resilience and efficiency were critical. So I also have a sister who's in cybersecurity, so we're all coming to play.
Thank you, Megan. And Jess?
Jess, my current role, I'm a director in PwC Canada's Strategy and Transformation Office. And I'm currently leading a transformation of our risk function. So I'm a engineer by background. I ended up in cybersecurity through a whole host of journeys, but mainly went in and was doing cybersecurity strategy between 2020 and 2024 when I moved into this role. And it's really just been a journey in my career of sort of finding roles and opportunities that enhance and allow me to deploy my superpowers and all of my skills and capabilities. So that's how I found myself in cyber. And looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you. And Amy?
Kind of like Jess, a very non-linear career path. I fell into risk management, similar to Jess as well, and then was tapped to sort of lead various arms of our security department back in the day. But now I am a co-founder and CGO of a small tech company launching next month. And so it is very different, but leveraging skills that I picked up along the way.
That's very exciting. I'm going to dive right in because I know I have a slew of challenges that I can talk about being a woman in the field of cybersecurity or security in general. And I'm convinced every single one of you has had a significant number of challenges to overcome. What's the biggest one you faced? Do you have an example on how to overcome them? Biggest challenge? Anybody want to start?
I can dive in. So I would say the biggest challenge I faced in kind of getting into and being deemed sort of critical is the, being technical enough. And so I think, that kind of comes with a whole host of things, but that was the sort of biggest challenge, and was getting in to be able to show that, even with the sort of business strategy mind and the previous risk experience I had, that it could translate into strategic sort of advice and capabilities in cybersecurity. And so that was kind of my own fun journey. And I think kind of the path to overcome really was kind of the proving and showing to folks, that look, I can deliver these things to a level of excellence that our clients expect and like. So, and also along the way, getting certifications when and where it made sense to sort of step up my role, and saying no to ones that didn't.
I love that, Jess. And again, there's some overlap there. And I guess, the being able to prove that you're technical enough, but that if you just give us the damn chance, we will step into it. I think I'm probably going to speak for everyone here. Like, we're resourceful, resilient, and up for a challenge. And if given the opportunity, we will work twice, even not 5 times harder, to prove our self-worth and that we belong in that room. And I think that's just being like a kind of like a strong woman. We're always trying to prove ourselves in these rooms. And I think that is a superpower as well. It's just making sure that you surround yourself with people that believe in you as well, or that you can call when something comes up at work and you just need a sounding board. Because for me, even in my current role now, I'm always like, oh, did I say that too aggressively? Are they going to think I'm a bitch? But really, I'm the one footing the bill and I'm the one making the strategic direction. And if I was a man, would I think the same things? So stepping up for the challenges and working hard.
Claiming the space.
Claiming
it's really important. Claim your space. You owned it. I'm keen to hear, Selina, I know, and Megan, you're fairly new to the field, whereas Jess, Amy, and I are probably older timer in security. Not that you haven't spent time in a professional setting, but we've got a couple of decades over you. Do you want to share what advice you would give to women interested into joining the field? And sometimes it's intimidating. I remember Selina way back was a team of men. What kind of advice would you give individuals, especially women, that are interested into joining cybersecurity?
Yeah, it kind of goes to what was said about owning that space, right? And also, nothing worth having comes easy, right? So for me, I've also had a very non-linear career path into cybersecurity. I actually started in HR before making that jump. And I've had, people who opened a lot of really great doors for me. And I think, owning space and then leveraging like people who want to help you, building that community and seeking allies, mentors, and a supportive network, right? So, when you come into this space, it is very intimidating. It's very male dominated, and anticipating those challenges and being mentally prepared. And just to what Amy said, having that sounding board, right? To say like, hey, these are the situations I'm going through. I'm nervous about it, and having a really supportive group to say, you can do this and we've got your back. I think that was the biggest thing for me that really pushed me to keep going.
Yeah, and I echo the same about really building that network, but more internal network. Like everyone has their external network and talks to everyone, but really internally. So when you pull up to that table, you do have a friendly face there, or someone who has already agreed on the backside or something, because it's going to increase that confidence you have to actually pull that chair up and have your voice, knowing that it won't just immediately be met with either silence or a bunch of no's. So having a friendly face at the table and just building those.
Before I hit you up with a hard one, Amy, I want to hear from most of the team, or not the team, the panel. Why do you think there's such a big gap in representation at all levels in cybersecurity? So from my perspective, I believe there's not a lot of CISO because there's not a lot of pipeline to make it to CISO. But why is that so? What is making it so darn hard to stay in security, or even begin to be in security, so that there is enough representation at all levels in the profession?
I'm going to go from like the entry into cybersecurity. There's so many things that we can talk about on why I think that there's so many reasons why why women aren't going into these roles and technical roles. But I'm just going to start by saying they're not marketed towards women, right? Like cybersecurity carries this like stigma of being like really complex, and it's very challenging, difficult. It's like science, STEM. And, where I'm seeing more and more girls and women start to be interested in those things. But it's very like focused on just, there's a kind of a boys club still at a certain point, right? And it's got kind of like a chicken and egg. You want more women, but you don't see the women, so you're afraid to be the first, right? But that's the challenge, right? And that's why I'm glad we're doing a podcast like this, so that people can see the representation at all different levels.
Yeah. I can add to that as well, just in terms of being flexible to the adaptive levels of communication. Like, women are more prone to be a little more quiet. It doesn't mean we don't have a ton of things going on in our brain or we're not doing a ton of work. We might just not ask that question. We're a lot more proactive in learning for ourselves. So some people maybe perceive if we don't ask those questions, we don't know what we're talking about, but it's not necessarily a question we have to ask where a man may need to ask, and that value is pushed to the forefront.
And I think it does go to pipeline, right? So being an engineer by, a degree, the same challenges exist for, I think, STEM career broadly, right? So it's the marketing these as real opportunities to young girls and saying, look, like, you can do all of these things, including cybersecurity, including these other, fields. And I think not to make it all about like politics in the more like sort of broader world, but I think if you see kind of the trend of the sort of broader conversation happening around women, I think it gets tied to this, right? Because has to start with, our kids, and saying like, you can do all of these things, and building that pipeline right from there. And then, in high school, in university, reminding again that these are valid and open doors. And then to all the points being made, once you step through that door, now recognizing you may, in a lot of respects, be that trailblazer, and building the community of supports and allies around you to get where you need to go. So it's kind of like that full, life cycle of it in my mind.
And Amy, I'm glad you didn't jump in earlier, because I do have a curveball for you. When we met, you were in the field of security, and you decided to say, I'm out, mic drop. You still are thinking risk. You can't take security out of the individual. But what was the impetus, aside from starting your own business and wanting to take the entrepreneur route? What made you decide, I'm done?
I had little babies. I had, at that time, I think 2 under 3. They were little. It was really, really hard. It was around the COVID time. And being in security at that time in my particular role, which was very broad, I was drinking from the fire hose everywhere I looked. Like on my home front, I was quote unquote failing, in my opinion, at work, even though, nobody told me I was doing a bad job. Everybody was actually saying the contrary and expanding my portfolio. I thought I was doing a bad job. So everywhere I looked, as a bad friend, like I was just totally drinking from the fire hose, and something really had to give, which was a really scary transition, because on paper, I was like, okay, I look like I'm following the steps, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, but I am being crushed. And my husband at one point was like, you need to make some changes. And at that time, our company was going through a big transition. So the big conversation was, how long can I hold out without completely losing my mind on all fronts? And I just took a leap of faith, and I actually got into real estate for the flexibility. And then because I have the risk and security mind, found opportunities, and I love a good challenge and get bored very easily. So that's kind of how it led me to my entrepreneurial kind of endeavors right now. But the biggest lesson, though, which isn't a part of your question, Susie, but I'm still drinking from the fire hose. I guess I just like drinking from the fire hose. And so I left security because I thought that there was a better alternative out there. And I got out there and I realized I like kind of drinking from the fire hose. So I don't know if that helps answer your question, but it's hard to do it all, and you just have to figure out and be okay with just doing the best you can. And it's probably more than a lot of people, actually.
We talk a lot about, through the career, mentorship, coaching, and sponsorship. While I do like the idea of coaching and mentorship, what really is important is sponsorship. But I'd love to hear every one of you's perspective on those three items. And if you have an example of something that was really a make or break throughout your career, or that helped you, give you confidence in pursuing an initiative or pursuing a role or a different change in career, I'm keen to hear, because we don't do it enough. There's not a leader that I've worked with that was more difficult than working for another woman. And as senior leader in the field of security, we're sometimes our worst enemy in fostering the growth of individuals of diverse background to progress. Because we thought we had it hard, everybody therefore needs to have it hard. Well, it shouldn't be that way. But let's hear you out on your perspective on coaching, mentoring, sponsorship, what it means for you. Do you think it's useful, not useful? And if you've got some example to share, that would be good. And some example perhaps in terms of how some of the listeners or viewers can do better.
My whole random career is predicated on sponsorship. In that, back to when I was talking about my introduction, I think what I've recognized over the last handful of years is that finding roles that I can use my superpowers in is where I will be successful. So to me, that has meant a mentor, or rather a sponsor, seeing those superpowers and then putting my name in those rooms and in those conversations to be able to be put into those roles. So getting into cybersecurity was that. People saw the value that I could deliver to the team and being what we would call a translator. So taking all of the deep technical humans and making that into real business value for our clients. And then much the same with my current role in risk transformation. Same, that a mentor or a sponsor said you'd be good for this role. And I think that gets coupled with the mentorship, because once they've plopped you into the role as a sponsor, then you do need that mentorship and coaching to be able to get out of our own ways with the reality that is imposter syndrome. I still think I wake up on a daily basis wondering when I'm going to get fired. So I think it's like sponsor to plop you in, coaching and mentorship to make you successful. So you really hone your superpowers to be able to take those skills and abilities to the next opportunity that gets plopped into your plate.
Yeah, I guess just to piggyback on that, that's totally how I fell into risk in the first place, is like we're trying to find a square peg and put it in the round hole, and we're having issues. And then comes along me, and I don't meet any of the criteria in the job description really whatsoever. And they're like, we just talked about sports and life and family. And I left being like, oh my goodness, I totally wasted this poor hiring manager's job. And the next day I had an offer, and he said, Amy, I can teach you technical. I cannot teach people interpersonal skills. And to this day, that hiring leader, I still often send him notes. I know his whole family. If he called me and needed anything, I am there, because he transformed my career trajectory completely by just taking a chance on me. And then to your point, mentoring me, giving me the tools, showing me what certifications I needed, and supporting me when I eventually left that organization. So I think sponsorship is incredibly key. And then it's up to us to live up to that kind of sponsor's belief in us, so we can see our own belief, right? And if somebody believes in you, and I believe this in kids as well, then they're going to go the whole way for you. They're going to work really hard, and it's a respect thing that is earned at that point.
I want to add to the list is the returnships as well for women returning from leave, any maternity leave or anything like that. I understand there is paternity leave and dads take it as well, but not, you're supposed to be able to dedicate that time to your children and raising in your family. But if you're so focused on keeping up with the technological advances and training and not knowing where you stand when you go back to your job, it's really hard to stay motivated. If there was some sort of, hey, 3 months out, looking forward to your return, here's an opportunity, that would be huge. That would be huge.
Selina?
Yeah, so I have a story about sponsorship that I love telling people, and I've probably told it many, many times, but it is how I started in cybersecurity. So, I started in 2018, but prior to that, my education and experience was in HR. And then after a few years of doing HR, I was really craving just more. And I got my first kind of exposure into tech through this HR system transformation project. And I was really fascinated, but I wasn't sure where I fit into the tech role. So I was really curious and just wanted to ask people in my company at the time, like, what do you actually do in your tech roles? And I talked to an amazing CISO. And
I know where this is going. It's uncomfortable, Selina.
No, this is a great story. I have to tell it. Okay. And, I talked to the CISO and she was like, this is what we do in cybersecurity. And I was really intrigued. But I was also a little bit worried because I'm like, okay, I have zero experience in tech. And I just had all these like flashbacks back to my computer science class in university where I got like a C minus. But, she saw my curiosity and she actually encouraged me to shadow the security team just to see if there'd be something I'd be interested in actually doing. And not only that, I was also interested in like data analytics at that time. So she allowed me to shadow the security team, but also created an opportunity for me to do the same with that team. And then, from the moment I started doing things in security, I was really, really hooked. And she was just such a great sponsor, right? She really pushed for that. And when a junior position opened up at the company, I applied and I got it. And, I love that story so much because she was such an inspiration. She still is an inspiration. And any guesses on who she is?
That's uncomfortable.
The same human that did it for probably a few of us. Yeah.
And she's still championing women to go into cybersecurity.
I suppose you accepting to do something I really hate in a podcast is a payback for me giving you a chance in security. Thrilled that you're in the field and loving it. Okay,
But I just wanted to give that because, it's such a great story of female sponsoring females and supporting each other, right? Because just, to a comment that you made earlier, Susie, that there is this kind of like tension that is created sometimes when you have like females in the workplace, and instead of collaborating, they're like, oh, you need to go through this pain and suffering that I did too. But it doesn't have to be the case. We don't have the luxury of doing that because there's so few women in the space. So we should be really focused on bringing them up. And, that's where I think mentorship is really helpful. I've gotten many great mentors that I have throughout my career who has helped me get the roles, provide that encouragement and just confidence as well in myself. And to what many people said already is like building that internally so that I can say, I can do these roles. I can get that technical role or, bring my superpowers into other areas of cybersecurity and help uplift the industry and people in it.
But Susie, I do think it is a nuance in the sponsorship comment because I would not that this is the just give kudos to Susie podcast, but you reminded me that part of my own journey has been that network, but you've been so selfless with your network. So then I kind of turn around and do the same to anyone in mine, that it's like any person in my network is also open to you. And I think that's also important as women in tech to be able to say like, hey, if you want to know Susie, like if I'm connected, like I will introduce you, and just making sure that those doors are open for folks, because that is how we build that sort of network of other women supporting women in the space.
Yeah, definitely. Again, the network is open. That's how you grow. That's how you maintain it. That's how you get tremendous talent like Selina joining an industry that is underrepresented. Thank you for the boost of ego this afternoon. But what would you say, or how could you help, or what would you tell other people in leadership role to become better at sponsoring, to become better at seeking and elevating and bringing diverse talent in the field of security or tech, Amy, and startup world? How would you help them become stronger allies?
I think open door policy. Not all people feel comfortable speaking in a big conference room full of people, So one of my CISOs, I could pop my head in and say hello. And I thought that was very helpful. And I could have conversations about, oh, what should I do? Should I get this certification? Should I not? Or just, hey, do you want to grab coffee? Like start to build the relationships. I think women typically, not always, but take themselves out of the race before the race even starts. So recognizing that gives women especially an opportunity to ask the question or to start to build the relationship.
What policy or initiative? Because policy kind of feel like it's a check in the box and you have to meet a number and, oh, we're going to have 10%, 11%, 20% at all layers. It feels perhaps conceited, and then it forces women to think, am I getting this, or any diverse talent, am I getting this role because I'm the token, or am I getting this role because I kick ass? What kind of initiative isn't deceitful and won't feel yucky that we're getting something as a handout, but we are getting it because we're really good at what we're doing? Have you seen anything that works in your organization or that you'd like to see working? And what do you think would make it work?
I think that those policies and initiatives, they're required to remind humans to think about diverse talent. I think it gets coupled with the mentorship and sponsorship that to remind people and diverse talent who are getting those opportunities and roles that they're there because they are the best. And that the initiative is just to remind those who still have the bias that they should look broadly at the talent. Again, that's not a representation of my experience. I think we do a good job of seeing just talent. Again, we have those initiatives for folks who have an inherent bias because it's natural in all of us. And I think reminding leaders that their job is to create other leaders, right? I think if every leader is in it for themselves, then we miss that the whole point is to make ourselves obsolete so we can go off and do the other fun stuff. And I think a lot of leaders miss that in using these initiatives and policies to bring in the right talent of all, talent and aspects to be able to move on to other adventures.
Policy scares me, honestly, when there's a policy in place, even if it is to remind people, because I would never want to feel like I got something just because I checked a box, right? So I personally struggle with that. I think it's more of creating an exposure opportunity, maybe something less formal. That's my kind of perspective.
Yeah. And I find when companies lean too hard on those inclusivity policies and everything, because I have seen where people have gotten jobs and promoted and they weren't actually the right people for the role, and you could tell, and it just doesn't promote that positive culture, and it's kind of hard to operate in that environment.
It makes things worse, right? When somebody, it's like, see, that's the proof of why we're not doing it, because ergo, you promoted someone that was underqualified. If we think of events and activities that are happening that foster an inclusion and would help grow it, part of what I want to see more is business hour activities, business hour networking opportunities, not needing to go and drink at 6 p.m. I've got 3 kids. I want things that are more mindful of people are not all drinkers, people are not all after hours. What kind of events or activities or systems do you believe would help retain, grow, and attract women in the field?
Flexibility. And you touched on it there. I went to a conference hosted by TOAST, which is a women in tech local organization. And one of the speakers there said exactly what you said, Susie. She misses opportunities because most deals happen not at the first happy hour, but the second. And then flexible working looks different for everyone, right? So I don't mind hopping back on my computer after my kids go to sleep. That's not for everyone. But if I can help get them to school or run and pick them up or make sure we get to hockey on time, I, again, will log back on and make sure all of my deliverables are done. So I think the misnomer that flexible work is just Fridays off, I don't think that's necessarily flexible work. So we're all nodding our head. So I think that's a flexibility.
I'm gonna try to speak to the culture and how leaders can build a culture that is what I like to think of as like psychological safety, right? Where women feel like we can contribute our best ideas, and not be worried about, going on leave and coming back about worried about our jobs, and, taking an hour to pick up our kids, and missing out on like a meeting that could have been pushed. So it's creating this space where, there is flexibility. You're not afraid to voice your opinions, and just creating a environment where people feel really valued and they can come in and contribute their best ideas. That will look different at every company, depending on, who the people are as well, because what we feel like is safe for us in an environment might look different. So it's really understanding the people and what they need. I know that's very broad and that's not very like, hey, you do this and implement this now, but it's just, I've seen it work for teams and as well as like big organizations. So it's really getting to understand the people who work for you.
Thank you. If we look ahead, security is not going to go away as a field. It's only going to get more important with AIs and a lot of other geopolitical situation, as well as what's happening in the world of tech. What change do you hope to see in the industry to bring in more of that, or increase the ratio of diversity within the field?
I'd like to see more visible female cybersecurity professionals, like this podcast, getting it out there, or getting articles out there, and almost like that female superhero for young women to look into that education and be like, wow, I can do that too. But we aren't very front and center. And I think just talking about it will make a big difference.
Yeah. So, with all these changes in like AI and technology, automation, it's a really exciting time. Some people think it's very scary. I see it as like huge opportunities. And yeah, I hope to see, these things being presented to younger and younger audiences to just get them excited about it, right? Because they're growing up with it. Like I believe like the millennials is the last generation that grew up with technology just starting to advance. But now the kids, like, this is their life, right? Like they have so much information available to them. So we can use that to educate them at a younger age on all these tech roles and cybersecurity, and just getting them excited. So that's what I really hope to see. It just being integrated more into like our education.
Thanks, Selina. Sorry, go ahead, Jess.
I was just gonna say from my experience, I do think that there is an opportunity for different ways in. Again, speaking of when I was sharing my own challenge of coming in, and it's like, well, you must be technical to be able to be successful. So figuring out, and changing the industry, that there are roles for, those translators or folks who can help make it real. Because there is still a challenge with any good leadership team of, this space is going to have to be invested in. And so how do we, in both talent and dollars, and so being able to have those folks in it that have that sort of risk or strategic mind. And that's not saying that, typical cyber folks don't, but there has to be different roads in, and it doesn't just have to come through, I have a, computer science or programming background, and I'm going to like make it into the field. And so that can then become a reality for the ways we get different voices around the table and into the field as well.
Yeah, I think I would agree. There's lots of really cool camps right now for kids. So I do think that's getting better from the STEM exposure to kids at an early age. But, similarly to what Jess mentioned, the rigidness of the role description sometimes is not open to those transferable skills that maybe that role actually needed. Maybe that role in particular doesn't need somebody with coding experience or X technical experience that is 10 years. So maybe it is somebody who can translate the business and the strategic direction along with, or even just Selina, probably you see this more so, but being able to speak to clients and customers and talk about your product offering in a way that a non-technical person would understand and get their buy-in. So I think we got to like kind of crumple up the old way of hiring a little bit and you're going to get some really awesome talent that just maybe didn't fit your old mold.
Thank you. I sent a list of questions prior, but I always like to throw a curveball, the questions that nobody has read it before, so it's not scripted and nobody has an answer at the ready. But in many of these podcasts or panel conversation, it's very go with the flow. There's a theme. What questions you wish you were asked that I have not asked today? I should have had a background music of the.
I have a question, not one that I particularly want to answer, but I want to ask everyone else is, have you hit a particular roadblock in your career journey that you couldn't get past? Like whether it was the culture of an environment, you just didn't like your leader, whatever was a hard stop. You tried to go around it and you just couldn't, and you completely veered the other way. What was it, and how did you take a hard right?
I mean, I can answer it as everybody thinks about my curveball and Megan's questions. I went scorched earth with an organization that had been there for over 5 years. Great team, great missions, cool company. Just worked for a bully that could not get past needing to demonstrate proficiencies in everything as opposed to look at potential. And I grew tired of being passed over for people that had high potential, not nearly as much of a track record of delivery. And I just decided, especially after the children, Amy, with being boxed in, I went scorched earth and I quit. And I made it public. It's important. And that's sometimes you won't be able to go past the obstacle. Sometimes the company culture, leadership culture, or the individual that you're trying to get through are just not going to let it happen. So you might not want to go scorched earth. I had the privilege of having decades of experience under my belt that gave me that opportunity to say, I'm out. Didn't have, I had support at home so I could pay the bills and continue working and finding another opportunity. Not everybody has that luxury, and I'm very mindful of that. But I quit because it just was not worth it.
I would say I've run into roadblocks throughout my career, the specifics of which probably don't really matter. But what it did do was drive that turning to of like what skills and superpowers and things do I have in my toolkit. And so how can I use that to go in other places? As Susie's been at the receiving end of a number of those conversations of like, what am I doing with my career? And so, but I do think that that's a muscle that helps anyone in their career, because to the point you made, Amy, right? The job description is not going to be written that you're going to fit it all. And our male companions will apply, as we all well know, when they fit much fewer criteria than we feel we need to. And so being able to kind of sit and be like, that person or that team or this whole thing is toxic and awful and it doesn't serve me. Okay, well, what can I do and what am I good at? And seeking that out and seeking mentors out to help me get there. That's even how this current role came to be. I kind of went and said, look, I've kind of hit a few roadblocks here and I don't think my superpowers are being seen. And I know that it's eroding my own confidence and my own brand. And so how can I leverage these to do something else? And so then within sort of a couple of weeks, I keep saying to folks, like, my mojo back, because I was like, oh, I'm being seen. When I show up in a room, people know that I'm there and delivering value. And so I think if we could just, that would be, something to remind folks, is where you can be like, what skills do I have? What are my superpowers? And then go find a team where people light up when you enter the room. That's where you want to be. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a big, shiny job. It could be a stepping stone on the way to something else, but it does give you the skills and confidence to be able to then go get the, big, shiny job.
So anyone has a questions you wish I'd ask? I'm not going to drop it.
Please. Would you do this again, Susie? Would you, looking back over the course of your career, everyone, would you take the same path? The bumpy, hard, challenging path of people underestimating you? Would you all still take it?
I would. I had a lot of fun along the way. And this new journey for me is coming back to security. Similar to you, Amy, I was, I'm done. I'm tired of it. It's getting boring. It's limiting. I don't feel I can have the broad impact that I know I can bring to organization. And I'm done. But now I'm back to security. So I would take the same journey, perhaps would give myself some grace for when I was earlier in my career of don't need to fit in and put the pantsuits, can wear collars, you can be who you want without needing to try to fit in so hard, because it was just not right to try to be somebody that I am not. That's how I would do it, but I would keep the same path.
I saw everyone nodded there for the most part.
Yes.
Yeah. I would keep the same path as well. I was really exposed to some amazing female leaders, and that's what got me here today. Even in my EA track, I supported a really strong female leader in the telecommunications side, and she showed me what it was to bring a solo female chair to the table with, and how to speak up. And I mean, honestly, she was really trying to diversify the industry, and she would wholeheartedly look into those resumes, and she just, I can't hire these females. I need more resumes. So I think that like bringing it up the education side of things and loading up the prerequisites would go a lot further, because there are females like her that want to diversify. And then moving over to my previous role where I met Susie, like the table was all strong, amazing female leaders, and everyone was free to talk and free to input. There wasn't any, like the conversation was way better than a heavily sided table.
I love it.
Susie, question I know that comes up on panel discussions like this is that the concept of sponsorship is great, but what if you can't get them? So maybe folks' advice on how do you get one where you don't have it and you need it?
Sponsorship might not come from the organization on which you're working in. Obviously, it's immediate. If you have a partner in your track and they sponsor you, easier. If you have a CISO in an organization you already worked at, easier. But sometimes sponsorship might come from outside your organization. And that is where having a cultivated and nurtured network that is payback, a good tide rise all boat. You've all heard this expression, right? It is where you can find that sponsorship of cold calling. You don't know, you see somebody, you think they're kick-ass, you love their content, you love what they're doing, and you reach out and say, hey, I want to go in this field. What you're doing or saying appeals or resonate with me. Let's meet. And it's to be bold, and it might not come from within, but it'll serve you. That'll be my 2 cents of nurture, create your network, keep it alive, but share it too.
So if everyone in this panel looks, in the past of a period of time when you were feeling really down about something, and, whether it's like a huge challenge you can get through, and you have the you now, what advice would you give to yourself?
Say it anyway. Just say it anyway.
Do it. Do it.
Just do it anyway.
Go for a run first, though. Get it out of your system so you're a little bit more level-headed.
Yeah. Make sure it's not emotional. It's professional, not emotional. Yeah.
I would say in my own, it's get the tattoo, say the thing, you've got this.
I would be ask for help, Selina. It's hard. It doesn't come naturally, and it would have saved me so much headache if I'd just been courageous enough to be vulnerable and ask for help and guidance when I was lost or having a hard time. It's a superpower, and people that cares about you will help. So I would say ask for help, less frustration, and get the tattoo, and get the tattoo, and go for the run, because those are all really important me times. In the spirit of time, I would love to hear from you. First, I'm very grateful for all of you to pick up my ask out of the blue to do something that I'm deeply uncomfortable with. What advice would you give women that want to come in the field or that are looking into leadership role in their organization in tech or cybersecurity? What advice would you give them?
Something I picked up from that Toast conference this fall was we all have imposter syndrome. We all think it's unique to ourselves in whatever room we're in, but we all have it, and that's okay. Go to the room, like nobody knows what they're doing, and that is also okay. Just work hard on finding the answers. And it usually always works out if you put in the effort and surround yourself with good people. So don't sweat the small stuff. Nobody really knows what they're doing when they start out, and just dig deep.
Nobody knows what they're doing at the top either, Amy, huh?
Yeah.
What about you, Jess?
I still think, like, meet with the humans in the field, figure out what skills and capabilities they have and how that meshes with your own toolkit, and then like figure out what of those you care about putting in your backpack and which ones you don't. Because you'll get a lot of advice along the way. I think that's, my own reflection of my journey into this space is like, yeah, I probably could have got a couple of certifications sooner. Because you kind of heard that loud and clear, and I just was like, no, I've got this. And so I think it's just, coming into the space, like, what are folks around you? What's in their toolkit? What of that do you care to add to yours? And you kind of double down on that, and then yeah, just kind of, get after it. I think the one advice I always give to coachees is the sort of like, what are your male peers doing around the table, right? And so putting yourself into the like, hey, if they're speaking up in spaces where they don't have all the knowledge and you have it and they're not fully capable, then you too don't have to go to that place, but you can lean a little bit further in that same way and say the silly thing.
I would say step into challenges, right? And leadership isn't about knowing everything. It's willing to take the lead and leading yourself. If you're uncomfortable in doing something, do it anyway, because you're going to gain the skills to do it again or learn from it. So lead yourself and step into challenges.
I agree. And when you're uncomfortable or it's a lot easier said than done to do it, just do it. Try and find that motivation elsewhere. Like, who may you be empowering? If you take this step, who did you just encourage? Like, it's not always about you. Who you may help others grow by doing this hard thing. So find that motivation somewhere else.
Thank you to each of you. It's been a pleasure. It's been a long time, way overdue for many of us to get back in touch, but I'm really grateful you spent some time to get onto this podcast with me today. It's my first, so be kind, stepping out of the comfort zone, but I'm really appreciate for every single one of you, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week.
Thank you, Susie. It's good speaking with everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to Beyond Checkbox Compliance. At RESTIV, we believe cybersecurity is about empowerment, not fear. If today's conversation has resonated with you, share the episode and help spread the word, because it's time to leave checkbox security in the past. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And until next time, remember, true security isn't just about meeting standards, it's about raising. Stay secure, stay sharp, and we'll see you again soon.